When I think of the strength of Alex Pereira, I don't really think about the left hook, the power, the leg kicks, or really anything to do with fighting. Ever since my birth and moments later on when I became conscious, there's been pressure, stress, expectations, and literally any other facet of a person's daily life that you can think of. And I'm sure it's like that for literally everyone. That being said, there is and always will be context. Where someone's from, who raised them, who and what is around them are all things that will naturally influence who that person will become and what they'll aim for. Someone like me does have struggles. It's hard to get out of bed when I've slept less than 8 hours. I have trouble concentrating studying for a test. I've been in and out of relationships, but what will inevitably happen is that the people in my life and the energy I have will make me stand up on my feet and move on with my life. The support systems which I've had the luck to be born into are enough to get me through all the struggles I've been in. But even if I've never had a problem overwhelm me, I've seen others go through shit that personally I couldn't see myself getting out of. This quote-unquote shit that I'm referring to in this case is being born somewhere where you're not meant to succeed. And there aren't many places worse in the world to live in than the Brazilian favelas. I mean, sure, you aren't in an active war zone, but goddamn, you might as well be. According to macrotrends.com, Brazil holds the 9th highest crime rate per 100,000 citizens in the world, being the 3rd highest in South America. If you ask anyone from Brazil where to go if you want the highest chance of being murdered, they'll without a doubt tell you to head on over to the favelas. To give a comparison, the favelas would be like a worse version of the ghetto or the projects in America. The lowest income housing which attracts the poorest people, which then attracts the slimiest of gang members, which then repels any law enforcement agents which value their life, thus increasing the criminal presence and causing a pretty gnarly cycle. Being born in the favelas is like an automatic handicap from birth. If you manage to make it to be an adult without joining a gang, becoming an alcohol/drug addict, or straight up dying, you're doing very well for yourself. In reality, I might be exaggerating about the state of the favelas, but statistics support the favelas being the place in Brazil with the highest crime rate and the lowest police presence. Alex Pereira, Glory Kickboxing double champ and UFC former and current champion in the middle and light heavyweight division, came from one of these favelas. Specifically, Pereira was born in one of the many favelas present in Sao Paulo, where he went through school until he dropped out at the age of 12 to work as an apprentice bricklayer and later in a tire shop in order to help his family out with some extra income. The struggles of being forced to be a grown-ass man and provide for your family instead of being in school got to Alex, with the habits of his similarly apathetic and directionless coworkers sticking to him pretty easily. According to Pereira himself, quote, "By the time I was 16 or so, I was drinking about a liter a day of rum at work, usually with a few beers mixed in there as well. I was an alcoholic, a full-blown alcoholic. That was just the lifestyle of working at that place. I didn't know any different. It just crept up on me." End quote. According to American Addiction Centers, most blue-collar jobs, think mining, food industry, construction, manufacturing, report that approximately 1 out of every 10 workers has some sort of alcoholism or reports some sort of heavy drinking. Predictably, this addiction got Alex into quite a bit of trouble, since being an alcoholic isn't just something that Pereira did for a couple hours a day. Going to and from bars every night, Alex got himself into a lot of street fights, which he generally ended up winning. Seeing that he was quite adept at rocking the fuck out of fellow drunk people in the favelas, Alex saw that there could be an exit from the downward spiral he had been on. He started kickboxing in 2009 when he was 21 years old, and 5 years later he was competing in Glory kickboxing tournaments. Glory is one of, if not the premier kickboxing organizations in the world, and in 2017, Pereira had managed to become the middleweight champion. This run to the championship is where Alex famously defeated Israel Adesanya twice, which would end up being 2 of the only 3 losses of Israel's kickboxing record. After being middleweight champ, Alex won the light heavyweight title in 2021. Making him the first ever Glory kickboxing simultaneous double champ. What the next move was for Alex was up in the air. He was obviously a household name for fans of Glory, but the fame and the money were probably just not enough for what he had accomplished. Thankfully, it ended up not having to be his decision. During an interview in 2020, Adesanya was asked about his only TKO loss to Pereira, in which he basically shit all over Alex, disregarding him as someone who didn't deserve any piece of his mind.
To the judges, that was the Glory World title fight, people, and I won that fight, but then I didn't finish the guy. People were like, oh, well, that's what happens when you leave it to the judges, but that's easier said than when you're actually in the fucking ring trying to do the work. But then, yeah, this fight I fought and I got knocked out. My first and only ever knockout loss, and then my only back-to-back loss as well. So for me, it was a lot of learning. But I'm glad it happened because I wouldn't be here where it was. And even the same guy now he watches all my fights, and every time I fight, like clockwork, he'll try and put something out like, I beat this guy. But I've never ever watched any of his fights, ever. So at the end of the day, no one knows who the he is. And he's gonna be that guy when I'm world champion, when I'm a legend. He's gonna be at some pub, talking some shit about, I beat that guy one time, trying to get a dick suck.
As he said himself, the interview motivated Pereira and made his next goal extremely clear. From his resume alone, it's not surprising that the majority of MMA organizations in the world had Alex on their radar. One of these being obviously the UFC, which he signed to in 2021. Since he'd already fought in a couple of MMA bouts, the first one being in 2015, going into the UFC wasn't something that was completely new. In his first ever UFC fight, Pereira KO'd his opponent with a flying knee, won unanimous decision over Bruno Silva in his second match, and KO'd Sean Strickland, the eventual middleweight champion, in the first round. The UFC, as usual, was fiending for pay-per-view buys, and they decided that his last win over Strickland, a highly ranked middleweight, was enough to grant Alex a title shot. Things wouldn't have gone down the way they did, but given their fight and the fact that Pereira was 2-0 versus Izzy in kickboxing, the matchmakers didn't have to do too much thinking. November 13, 2022. Both Alex and Israel step into the octagon in the Madison Square Garden in front of a sold-out crowd and who knows how many pay-per-viewers. The fight mirrored their last kickboxing bout. It was a long, drawn-out 5 rounds with Israel controlling the pace and even rocking Alex at the end of the first round. With the distance, speed, and control, everyone watching clearly saw that Adesanya had a lot more experience and was dominating the whole way through. The judges, who were obviously watching what we were watching, only scored the second round for Alex. The general vibe we were all getting was that Adesanya was finally going to get his get back. But in the 5th round, Alex pulled a nasty fucking uppercut and a left hook out of his Brazilian ass and TKO'd Israel with only 2 minutes left on the clock. Just like in kickboxing, Alex got dominated for nearly 25 minutes just to end up winning anyways. Since the win was so late and so unexpected given how one-sided the fight had been, Adesanya got an immediate rematch in which he KO'd Alex in the second round. After his loss, Alex decided to go up to light heavyweight in order to have an easier weight cut. In light heavyweight, he beat Adesanya's only other loss in Jan Blachowicz via decision, and in November 12 of 2023, he knocked out Yuri Prochazka to gain the undisputed light heavyweight title. From the bars of Brazil to the bright lights of New York in the UFC, somehow in some way Alex Pereira found himself at the top of the world, 2-time Glory Kickboxing champion and 2-time UFC champion. Looking at his rise, it's easy to attribute it to his power, his technical skills, or his left hooks. But I believe that his power doesn't come from any of that. To me, it's clear that the strength of Alex is his unwilling determination to move forward. After winning the belt, Alex called out Adesanya.
Bom, eu queria, eu nunca sou de chamar ninguém, mas eu acho que, queria uma luta aí que é interessante pra mim e seria interessante, eu tenho certeza que vai ser pra todo mundo. É uma pessoa que, de alguma forma me incentivou quando eu tava em bar bebendo e ele em vídeo falou que eu iria ficar em bar.
At the end of the day, no one knows who the fuck he is. And he's gonna be that guy when I'm world champion, when I'm a legend. He's gonna be at some pub talking some shit about I beat that guy one time.
Mas ele me resgatou. Esse cara também falou recente que vai voltar só em 2027. E eu também, da forma que ele me resgatou, eu quero resgatar esse cara porque ele é um talento. Ele não pode ficar esse tempo todo parado. É o Adesanya. Com todo respeito, eu não vou fazer que nem o Adesanya fez eu fazer 3 lutas para mim estar disputando cinturão com ele.
But what he said made it clear to everyone watching that the message he was trying to convey was something completely different. After losing his belt to Sean Strickland, Israel said publicly that he wouldn't be back anytime soon. A couple weeks later, he pleads guilty to a DUI charge in New Zealand. To anyone out there interested in the story of these two men, it's clear that the tables have turned. In the same way that Adesanya unwillingly rescued Pereira from the bars with his interview, Alex is now trying to ignite that same fire in his rival to bring him back. Adesanya says he won't be back until 2027, but something tells me that will probably not be the case.